All right, let's call this meeting to order. This is the monthly meeting of the Bloomington Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization Policy Committee. And if we can start with a call to order, if every member present can state their name and their affiliation. We'll start on my right with Mr. Bannock.
Hello, Jason Bannock, Indiana University.
Margaret Clements, Monroe County Plan Commission.
Doug Horn with Bloomington Public Transit Corporation Board of Directors.
Andrew Seabor, serving as proxy for Mayor Hamilton.
Steve Olin from the Bloomington City Council.
Pamela Samples, Ellisville Town Council and Ellisville Planning Board.
Bloomington, Sarah Ryderban for the Bloomington Monroe County Citizens Advisory Committee, the MPO.
Penny Githens, Monroe County Commissioner and proxy for Julie Thomas, Monroe County Commissioner President.
And if we can call on the individual members who are online, who I can't see on this screen right now.
Lisa Ridge, Monroe County Highway Director.
Kate Wilkes, Monroe County Council.
Jillian Kinsey with the City of Bloomington Plan Commission.
Is that everyone?
Yes.
Can we see the people online on screen by any chance? Can they turn on cameras?
Not while I'm sharing my screen, I don't think.
Okay. Because I don't know that the screen needs to be shared if everyone has the agenda in front of them. I trust that most of us do. I have the agenda in front of me. So I think it would be preferable to have the members on screen if possible. But I shall go over the agenda now. We'll have approval of the agenda, approval of minutes for the previous meeting, communications from the chair, reports from officers and or committees, including the Technical Advisory Committee and the Citizens Advisory Committee. We'll hear reports from the MPO staff, including on the FHWA fiscal year 2022-2023 electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plans and the 2022 City of Bloomington ADA transition plan. Under old business, we'll hear the BMC MPO public participation plan. Under new business, the INDOT 2-year and 4-year pavement and bridge transportation management targets, BMC MPO fiscal year 2022 through 2026 TIP amendments, including State Road 46 to replace superstructure at Jackstafeet Creek, State Road 46 HMA overlay structure from State Road 446 to the west junction of State Road 135. 2 items under that heading. State Road 46 small structure replacement 5.05 miles east of State Road 446 and pavement markings at various locations in the Seymour District. We'll then move to public comment on matters not included on the agenda. Communications from committee members on matters not included on the agenda, and upcoming meetings, announcement of upcoming meetings. With that, is there a motion to approve the agenda as read?
I move to approve the agenda as read.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the agenda? Seeing none, if Mr. Clements would call the roll on approval of the agenda.
Githens.
Yes.
Ryderband.
Yes.
Samples.
Yes.
Volin.
Yes.
Ridge.
Yes.
Seabor.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Clements.
Yes.
Bannock.
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Wiltz.
Yes.
Thank you. The agenda is approved unanimously. We move now to approval of the minutes for September 9th, 2022. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the September meeting.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion of the minutes from last month? To my left. To my right. Online. If you have a comment online, just speak up since I cannot see you. No comments from any members. With that, if we can have a roll call vote on approval of the last month's minutes.
Ryderband.
Yes.
Samples.
Yes.
Volin.
Yes.
Ridge. I'm not sure I heard that.
Yes.
Thank you. Seabor.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Clements.
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Wiltz,
Yes.
Githens.
Yes.
And the minutes are also approved unanimously. We now move to communications from the chair. The only thing I have to report is that I have been working on the letter that I promised to Ms. Clements and Ms. Thomas and Mr. Mr. Ferris. It's extensive research I'm trying to do in order to respond thoroughly to it, but I regret to say that I have not yet completed that letter, and I wanted to apologize for the continued delay. Moving on to reports from officers and/or committees. Let's hear from the Technical Advisory Committee.
Committee member Nate Nickel wanted me to give his update since he is unable to be here today. His notes say that the TAC was recommending the BMC MPO public participation plan, was also recommending the NDOT 2- and 4-year pavement and bridge transportation management targets, and also recommended for approval the BMC MPO fiscal year 22 to 26 transportation improvement program amendments, all 5 of them.
Very good. Any questions? Although Mr. Nichols is not here to answer them. Any questions from members? Seeing none, we'll go to the Citizens Advisory Committee. Ms. Reiterband.
Citizens Advisory Committee have the same recommendations as the TAC.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Reiterband? Online? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports from the MPO staff. Mr. Martin.
Indiana Department of Transportation submitted to the Federal Highway Administration their electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plan. They made the submission at the end of August, and they anticipate approval of that plan anytime this month. The plan must have approval, final approval, by December 31st. The document online through the website here shows a date of July, and that's not the same date as the document that was submitted, because that document, we were told, was submitted at the end of August. But anyway, I'm sure what they did was they probably made minor cosmetic changes prior to the submission of the final document. Please look at it at your leisure. Of the 50 states that have been submitted as of 2 weeks ago, 26 or 27 of those states had been approved. So we anticipate, again, NDOT receiving approval for their deployment plan by the end of this month. And all of these are for level 3 charging stations. I wanted to reiterate that again. Level 3, I'm sorry, question?
No, I'm just trying to hear.
Oh, I'm sorry. Here, I'll put it closer. All of these are level 3 charging stations, not level 1, not level 2, level 3. Though that's subject to change as the crisis gets a little more acute here in the next couple of years. So this is a forward-looking document where we replace the hitching posts of gas stations with the electric plug-ins of the new world. Any questions, anyone?
Are there questions for Mr. Martin on the electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plan? Let's start online with members who are online. Please speak up.
Yeah. Yes, this isn't in our packet, is it? Did I miss it?
Mr. Martin?
No, we did not put it in the packet because that would have added substantial bulk to the packet. So instead, instead we went with just the URL. Therefore, it makes it a lot easier for you to reference the document at your leisure electronically.
Further questions from members online? Seeing none, we'll go to members to my right. Any questions for Mr. Martin? To my left. If none, I'll ask 2 basic questions. Number one is, this is not a document that the MPO is expected to lend its approval to, correct?
No.
Okay. And secondly, can you explain very briefly what level 3 means?
Level 3 is the basic type of charging station. In other words, if you were to plug in your automobile, level 3 is the basic level of charging station. If you were to plug in your electric vehicle, it could take you up to 5 or 6 hours. Level 2 cuts that time somewhere around 50%. Level 1, which is the highest level, you could do that in probably a half hour or 45 minutes recharging your vehicle, depending on how discharged the vehicle is.
Very good. This actually leads me to ask Mr. Seabour a question. Off the top of your head, do you know what level charging stations the city has in its garages?
I do not.
You were the only person I thought would know. I don't know off the top of my head either.
Three fingers are up in the air.
What's that?
3 fingers are up in the air.
We have level 3 stations in our
Level
garages?
3.
Mr. Martin knew that. I should have asked him in the first place.
Well, I mean, it would make sense because you're expected when you drive in to plug in, and then it's there all day, all you're supposed
That's
to
a
be
good
working.
point.
And it'll be charged maybe by the time you leave.
The final question I guess I would have is how many charging stations does INDOT call for in the Indiana plan?
I can't remember the exact number, I apologize. The installation priority goes by functional classification of route. So the interstates will have the plug-ins first, followed by the primary arterials, and then the minor arterials and the collectors after that. And all of these, I had mentioned this a couple of months ago, all of these will be private enterprise. In other words, INDOT will facilitate private enterprise of this. INDOT has no intention whatsoever of managing any of these stations.
Understood.
So the upfront investment will come from private enterprise. Those will be reimbursed 80% of their funding. 20% will be at their own cost, but then they can charge usurious amounts for profit.
Understood. Okay. All right, thank you for that report. Can we move on now to the next item?
Okay, City of Bloomington recently received approval for their ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan. This is online. I don't know if you want to pop that up or not. That's not it. Well, anyway, we did not put that document into your packet, again, for the sake of bulk. Instead, we reference it. There you are. Thank you. We reference it as a URL. So now the City of Bloomington is totally up to date on its ADA transition plan. Bloomington Transit is up to date completely on their ADA transition plan. Monroe County's ADA transition plan, I believe, was approved 2 years ago. So it's current also. I'm sorry, I don't know about Ellettsville, where the status is on Ellettsville's transit plan. And I do know that Rural Transit is up to date on their transition plan also. These are all having current ADA transition plans is a prerequisite for the receipt of all federal funding for transportation projects.
Any questions for staff about the city's ADA plan? To my left? To my right? To members online? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you for that presentation. We move on now to old business and the BMC MPO public participation plan.
All right, here's the public participation plan in the packet, of which you've all probably seen it a few times by now. The CAC made an additional suggestion as an amendment, and that is in the plan. And I will just go over that since we have extensively gone over this a few times. But again, I'll be happy to talk about any of the plan here. Let's see if I can find it here. Okay, so the suggested amendment is under the topic public meetings and workshops, and The amendment reads as follows. The MPO will try to hold these meetings at various locations throughout the urbanized area and endeavor to enable remote participation for members of the public who cannot attend in person. And that is the only thing that has changed in this document over the last several months.
Does that complete your
happy
presentation?
to take any questions.
Okay, very good. Are there any questions about the public participation plan, which we are voting on today? Commissioner Githens.
Yes, I have a couple. Because I'm a proxy, I wasn't here when you were going through this previously, but in the introduction on page 9, it says the policy committee consists of municipal elected officials. You take out the word "and county," and I really object to that. I believe that there should be county participation in the MPO, or the policy committee for it, and I would like that taken out. I would like that, or I would like "and county" reinserted. That's in the 4th paragraph, the first line.
Point of order, Commissioner Githens, can you, what page is that again?
It's on page 9 of our packet. It's the 4th paragraph, first line. It says the policy committee consists of municipal elected officials, because it takes out "and county."
Page 9 of the packet.
Under the introduction.
Paragraph. Under?
It's an introduction.
I think we feel that the word municipally kind of encompasses everyone.
No.
The town of Ellettsville, the city of Bloomington, the county.
But it does not, no, it does not. We're not a municipality.
Excuse me?
The county is not a municipality under any definition. You can have elected officials, but if you take out the word "and county," you have excluded us.
I'm afraid I'm still trying to find the...
It's in the introduction to the PPP.
It's on page 9 of the packet, the 4th paragraph.
Sarah, can you please show me here? Because I'm seeing different page numbers.
We have it on the screen as well.
Yeah, it's on the screen, so additional areas of interest, it's in the introduction.
This is...
In any case, this was certainly not the intent, as the county throughout this entire document is, I would say, represented quite well within the MPO and its public participation plan.
Would you like to make a motion to amend in that way to return those words, Commissioner Githens?
Yes, I make a motion to amend this plan so that the words "and county" are reinserted.
Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on this motion? Is there discussion online, from members online? Is there any discussion from people to my right? To my left? I am looking up the definition online, and I see it says municipal relating to a city or town or its governing body. It does not say, does not mention county, but although my understanding of it has been that municipality did apply to counties, I don't see a problem with re-including those words. So my personal opinion is that I would be fine with this amendment. Are there any other comments? Ms. Wiltz.
There's there's just a kind of a Scrivener's error kind of in that same sentence that I don't know if we could just wrap that all together.
The Scrivener's error is?
Yeah, they repeat something twice.
It repeats non-elected members twice.
Yeah, I already alerted Mr. Murphy to that.
Okay, great. I just figured since we were on that.
Correct, yes, that will be, or that is already removed in the non-packet version.
Okay, very good.
Or in the non-redlined version, I should say.
All right, let's keep to the change proposed. Any other comments from members online? Seeing none, if we can have a vote on the amendment. Mr. Clemens?
Samples.
Yes.
Volin.
Yes.
Ridge.
Yes.
Seabour,
Yes.
Horn,
Yes.
Clements,
Yes.
Bannock,
Yes.
Kinsey,
Yes.
Wiltz,
Yes.
Githens,
Yes.
Ryderband.
Yes.
That amendment passes unanimously. Are there any other? Oh, Ms. Githens.
I have another, this is a question, and it's because of my own personal background. On page 21 of this, it talks about measuring public outreach with a set of performance objectives, which I think are fabulous, but I don't...
Can you tell us what section that's in?
I'm sorry, this is on page 21 in the section measuring public outreach.
Thank you.
Could I know how that's going to be measured, since that's the title of the section?
There's no fucking way to measure it.
Well, that's a good question. Normally, we measure it by the number of people that we get to come to public meetings, or the number of press releases or public comment or public event activities. Those are normally how we would measure these.
Also, you use the response to surveys, I believe. Is that
As well as
correct?
those as well, correct, thank you.
But do we have any measure of things like diversity?
This is definitely something that we're going to begin working on. But yes, this is unfortunately a difficult task that we're gonna strive to start working on, as this is in our Metropolitan Transportation Plan, as well as it's in our UPWP as a planning emphasis area for this year and for next year, to get the ball rolling, to make sure that we have as many people within our metropolitan planning area represented as possible, as well as the outreach provided to them as well.
Ms. Githens?
I still didn't hear anything about how it's measured, really. I mean, just counting a number doesn't tell me what percentage of people were reached. It doesn't tell me if we've achieved any of the objectives, which again, I said, I believe the objectives are good. No quarrel at all with that. But I just don't feel like we're truly measuring anything. Thank you.
Sure, yes, and to respond to that, this is a plan, so this is forward-looking. This is not necessarily what we've done in the past. So we will be planning on doing that in the future based on what is written here in this plan.
Ms. Ryderbrand?
Would you suggest that this is aspirational rather than a concrete plan of how to achieve your goal? And I'm also wondering if it may be more difficult, especially with online surveys and so on, to get from our participants what categories they fit into in terms of diversity of return. Certainly in person, one may be able to tick a box, and often you can't. Things have become more and more gray, and it seems as if what I'm reading in this is that you want to make sure, in line with our values, that we reach out as broadly as possible into the community to gain participation and try to assess each one of those reaches to see how well you're achieving that goal. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, exactly. I would say that, yes, it is aspirational, but it's also absolutely achievable. And this plan talks a lot about the planning process for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, of which our last one, we reached over, I want to say, 600 participants from every, I want to say every single neighborhood in our planning area, and through that we were able to see the diverse background as well as, or of the people who were directly, I guess, making their voice heard through that MTP survey. And then we documented all of that in the MTP, I want to say chapter 3. So you can actually go into chapter 3 of the current MTP and see all of that.
Ms. Retterbrand, did you have a follow-up? Further comments? To my right, Ms. Clements.
Well, I completely agree with Commissioner Githens that these kind of aspirational metrics are not satisfactory or sufficient, especially when some of the other wording in the participation plan has been downgraded from must include different demographics to shall endeavor, shall try, etc. So when we are not specific about the metrics, and we give reference to things like online surveys, to me it's a built-in opportunity to take the easy route. I mean, public participation is hard in a community. It's very difficult. And I don't believe our community should endeavor in any way to give an out to the leadership, especially on these high-ticket items that influence the daily lives of our community in profound ways.
Comments from members online or questions? We'll go back to Ms. Reiterbrand.
I guess I'm wondering from Ms. Clemens if she can give us some specifics for how we would actually achieve that, or if she would be willing to talk to staff about her ideas about how to achieve the absolute specifics of how to reach these goals, because to me it's still a goal, and since this is a plan, it's lovely to know that there are action steps to take, but I'm not sure that I'm hearing what those action steps might be for achieving the metrics that she's looking for.
Well, I do have ideas. You could put in a percentage of property owners within the metropolitan area, within the county, within the city, compare them to each other. You can also hold different types of events that don't rely only on online surveys. You can have, for instance, events at fire stations or events at driveways, because we have a large number of people in our community who don't have smartphones, and their frustrations they express, but they are not on Facebook, they're not on the avenues that are widely used to measure, I guess, satisfaction with the current system. So I think that demanding of the Metropolitan Planning Organization to have a higher standard and a higher duty of public involvement is something that should be aspired to in this public outreach plan. Thank you.
If I can ask a point of order, what is the deadline, if any, for adopting this plan?
There is no deadline for adopting this plan, because this is the current version that is online and that has been in previous packets is what we're currently operating with.
And how long ago was that last updated?
11 years ago.
Yes.
So, but we're not under any kind of deadline from federal or state authorities to get this updated?
Correct, yeah, not at all. We took it upon ourselves to update this, as we thought that it was quite outdated, and we wanted to update some of the language within the plan, and we feel like that's the whole purpose of doing this right now.
I'd like to ask a question then. If this section, which is Ms. Githens has noted, is called measuring public outreach, but doesn't actually specify how it's measuring. If it were retitled public outreach objectives, would staff have an objection to that retitling?
I wouldn't think so.
Okay. Ms. Githens, just curious, if it was called public outreach objectives, would that at least solve the immediate problem that it doesn't describe exactly how it's measuring?
Well, but I think we want to measure it. I mean, for example.
Well, no, I don't disagree. I want to get to that.
No.
Okay. Because I mean, the next logical question is to follow up on what the two members have said and like how we would do it. Ms. Reiterband.
I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, if indeed, if as we were going to, I think maybe 6-8 months ago, adopt this policy as an update to the one that was passed 11 years ago. And it does not mean that we can't come back and amend it in 8 months, 10 months. The only objection at that time was the fact that given the last 2 years of work online, virtually, and the ability to reach people who cannot come to public meetings, that we believed that should be part of how public meetings are envisioned for the future. So I'm wondering if indeed this body can go back and pass what it was going to pass with that addition. We could then come up, perhaps Ms. Clements would come up with some very specific things that she would want in that section on measuring or objectives for measuring public input, and then bring it to this policy and this participation plan, and we can examine it at that time. But without something very specific in front of us, I don't know how we can do that. And I hate the idea that we're still relying on a policy from 11 years ago to guide our public participation.
Since you've addressed that comment to the chair, I would respond by agreeing that I think that it would be better to at last adopt an updated document and then go back and amend it. And what we can do for those who would wish to amend it, and I want to encourage Ms. Clements to develop an amendment, and in fact I would join her in it because I think that the question that she and Ms. Githens have raised is relevant. You know, like I'm going to propose in a minute to amend that title to the way I suggested so that it solves the problem for now, but we can put this document back on the agenda once an amendment is ready. Would that be satisfactory to those who have just proposed that more substantial change? Ms. Githens, Ms. Clements?
There are those of us here who serve on this committee who believe that the amendments should be drawn up by staff given our input at these meetings.
That is another relevant question. Let's assume that staff does draw them up, but they're going to need consultation with us members in order to know what we want. So would it be acceptable to you and Ms. Githens if we scheduled this to come back on the agenda as soon as that amendment is ready?
Well, as a citizen participant and as a president of the Monroe County Plan Commission, of course I will serve, but I will vote no on the suggestion. Thank you.
Ms. Githens?
Well, I want to point out that this is about public outreach, this section, not just public input, which to me are very, very different kinds of issues. The outreach to me means also spreading the word about what this is, and you have to do that before you can have any input, basically. So I am having trouble kind of putting it all together, I guess.
Okay, understood.
There's some cognitive dissonance on my part.
Well, I appreciate the responses, and what I would say to my colleagues is that it's clear that perhaps the document is not fully acceptable to every member. You know, to which I would respond, at some point we should put it to a vote. If it is in fact, and I have to direct this question to the staff, if it is in fact possible to amend the document at any time. Is that correct?
Yes, we can amend this document at any policy committee meeting.
Okay. Are there further questions from members online?
Yes. Yes.
Who is speaking?
Yeah.
Hi, we've had our hands up, sorry.
Ms. Kinsey, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think the point that Penny Githens has raised is really important, and I appreciate Margaret's elaboration on how the importance of measures, and I couldn't agree more. However, I think that there's been an appropriate idea here expressed about the need to update this document, and I really, really want us to update a very old document to reflect more current participation modes. So I think that should be foremost on our mind to get this out to the public, to make sure that there's something more up to date. And the identification of indicators for this kind of measurement is really a complex task. And but I think it's worthy of doing. So providing staff a little guidance on how this might be undertaken to identify the appropriate indicators for these 4 objectives seems a worthwhile project and could be something that could be pursued separately and with our input. I would love to see if this could be a project that the staff could take on. I mean, it doesn't have to be enormous, but some identification of reasonable indicators to move forward on this, I think is really worthwhile. But I would really hate to hold up the adoption of an otherwise completely appropriate document. And again, think these if it were reframed, retitled as public outreach objectives, that would accurately reflect what's in the current document. And I think that would be a reasonable compromise to not hold up this important document a lot farther. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Kinsey. Further comments from members online?
Yes, actually, my comments were very much along the lines of what
Ms. Wiltz, yeah, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, my comments were very much in line with what Ms. Kinsey just stated, and I do think that it's very important to add some metrics to this type of document. I would suggest instead of objectives, we refer to these as goals, because that's goals typically are intended to not be as measurable. That's just my little 2 cents on the phrasing there, but strongly encourage that we support staff in coming up with metrics and ways in which we can measure these goals.
Thank you. Further comment from any member? If seeing that, Ms. Githens.
Is it possible to set up a time frame for doing this?
Well, I'd like to, we have a question on the table as to whether or not to adopt this document. I think that if we decide we're not going to, or we're going to postpone it, but I think we need to resolve that question before we answer that next question, which I'm committed to. But I'd like to propose that we rename this, this title from Measuring Public Outreach to Public Outreach Objectives, and I'd like a second. Is there, I have a second. The reason I didn't take Ms. Wiltz's advice is because in that first paragraph it says that the BMC-MPO has developed a set of performance objectives. So while I agree with her that goals might be more appropriate here for the sake of expedience and recognizing that we are committed to amending this document in a very immediate manner, like in the next meeting or two. For now, it's just that I think this would fix the problem, and then we can then revisit it once we've revisited the actual ways that we would attempt to measure public outreach. So if that, having said that, are there any questions for the amendment that I'm proposing? To my left. To my right? For members online?
May I ask a question?
Mr.
May I
Horn?
ask a procedural question? In that we're changing the copy with these two motions that we've had, does this document need to go back to the subcommittees for their further consideration and approval?
So far, the corrections that have been made are so nominal that they're easily understood. Generally speaking, we should be doing every change in writing, but changing a couple of words here, such as Ms. Githens proposed and what we accepted, if it's a couple of words, and especially if, can the document be shown on screen, Mr. Clements, with the corrections? I mean, are you able to correct the documents that are on screen while we're sitting here?
This is in a PDF format,
okay.
So...
Well,
technically you're right.
The reason I'm asking it is because it has shifted back and forth between these committees a number of different times as this body has made changes or suggested smaller changes. It's had to go back. And Sarah, maybe you'd care to comment on how you view that procedure. You were concerned that the document flow in a proper way at earlier discussions. And
Ms. Reiterband?
I guess I would turn to staff to assure us that this works. I don't think that, since I think most people's understanding of municipality included county, the fact that we've reintroduced and county doesn't change the document substantially, and that we've now called this objectives, again, does not change it, because that's the first thing that it says, is that these are objectives. So it would seem that we're not substantially changing it. The other change we made introduced another idea completely, and that was that in our public meetings, we were going to include a virtual component, or express that this would, in the future and forevermore, until it's amended out of there, it would include a virtual feature. That was not a part of what was expected for public meetings in the past, and was felt to be an absence in the document. So I don't see it as being substantially different, and something that would, in that kind of minor wording, need to go back.
Mr. Horn?
And I'm happy to send it back to CAC and TAC.
Mr. Horn?
thank you.
In response to Mr. Horn, I'd like to make another suggestion. We are still on the topic of whether to accept this amendment I've proposed, but in light of Mr. Horn's question, what I would also suggest is whether or not you accept this amendment may not matter. What we can do as a body is approve the flawed document without its improvements as is, because it still improves on the document from 11 years ago. And because we've already, the sense of the body is to further edit it, that we will put it on the agenda for next month and write up all of the suggestions that were made tonight or today so that they will be visible in this document. I would welcome any comment from any member on whether or not that would be acceptable as well. I think it's more important that we simply adopt the document already, flaws and all, and then fix it next month. That way we can get in writing all the requests that people have made, but at least it's better now than the document that was 11 years ago. Are there any, do we have a question online?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Ridge, go ahead.
Okay. The only thing I wanted to remind, I know you keep saying next month, our meeting, I believe, in November is moved up a week, so we'll actually be meeting again in just 3 weeks, and we won't have a December meeting. So I just didn't want to put a timeline on staff that is not reasonable for them.
Oh, I'll put a timeline on staff.
Or any other committee that wants to look at the changes.
You know, these documents could go back to, I mean, there's going to be time, the other committees meet before this committee does. There will be time to get this on the agenda. If it's as important as it seems to be to us collectively, I think that it's incumbent upon us to act So I have no problem scheduling it for next month, if that's okay with everyone else. But we still have a question on the table, namely whether or not to amend this title from measuring public outreach to public outreach objectives. Are there any other comments on this amendment? To my left, online, to my right, Mr. Horn.
Well, could we just simply we've already approved a change to put back in Monroe County in the one section.
Correct.
Can we move forward with a motion to approve with that correction of error comment and consider that a correction of error? I think having had a definition read, it's obvious that this is a Monroe County City of Bloomington organization, and without that, we've made an error.
I mean, we have,
so if we could then just continue, and then this whole business of the metric is important. It stands more alone at that point.
Okay.
And we're not opening a floodgate of minute changes.
Well, then I would ask simply, because the question I posed is now belongs to the body and not to me, I'd ask for a negative vote on my proposal so that we can move on. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Volan.
No.
Ridge.
No.
Seabour.
No.
Horn.
No.
And
Clements.
could you just once again rephrase exactly what I'm voting on?
We're voting on the change from measuring public outreach to public outreach objectives. That title there, I had proposed to change it from measuring public outreach to public outreach objectives. And I'm asking the body to reject it so that we can change it later and move on.
Okay, I vote no. Thank you.
Bannock.
No.
Kinsey.
No.
Wiltz.
No.
Githens.
No.
Ryderband.
No, but it sounds like a double negative, so I'm confused.
Samples.
No.
Okay, the motion to make that change has been rejected. We now come back to the question as amended. Are there any other changes, or should we go to public comment? To my right? To my left? To members online? Let's go now to members of the public. Are there any members of the public, either online or in the room, who would like to make a comment on the BMC MPO public participation plan? If you are online, please use the raise hand function in Zoom or type into the chat and Mr. Clements will recognize you. We have no one in the room proper who is getting up to speak. Mr. Clements, is there anybody online who would like to speak on this subject?
Not that I'm seeing at the moment.
Last call for public comment on this item. Mr. Clements, final call. Is there anybody else who's raised their hand?
Nope.
Okay, we'll come back to the body for final comment on the public participation plan as amended. Comments from members online. To my right.
I guess just to clarify, I can't remember, did we make a motion? Has there been a motion on this with the amendments?
We did make a motion to approve it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. To my left, final comments. Again, I will take the opportunity to say that I'm committed to rescheduling this for next month, despite its potential adoption today, but that adopted even in this flawed form, it's better than what we had 11 years ago, and it's time to update it. With that, Mr. Clements, would you call the roll?
Ridge.
No.
Seabour.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Clements.
No.
Bannock.
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Wiltz.
Yes.
Githens.
No.
Ryderband,
Yes.
Samples,
Yes.
Volan.
Yes. What is the total?
We have 8-3.
So the plan is adopted 8-3, and again, I'll be proposing that it be added to the agenda next month, and that amendments, I will work with staff to develop amendments based on the proposals made today. I count at least 2 proposals, myself and Ms. Clements' proposals. Okay, moving on to the next item, which is not in front of me. The next item is new business, the INDOT 2-year and 4-year pavement and bridge transportation management targets. Staff?
Okay, the targets you have before you are required, well, the establishment of targets by each state in the nation is a congressional requirement for part of the performance measures of everything that INDOT does. They have safety targets, they have on-time performance targets, and a lot of other items. This set of targets, which you have before you, includes only the 2- and 4-year pavement and bridge transportation management program performance targets. And I will read those to you just so we have those for the record. The 2-year target, 2024, for percentage of national highway system bridges classified in good condition, 49%. 4-year target for 2026, that target is 47.5%. Percentage of NHS national highway system, I'll spell it out, bridges classified as in poor condition, 2-year target is only 3%, 4-year target is 3%. Percent of pavements on the interstate system in good condition, 2-year target is 60%, 4-year target is 62%. Percentage of the pavements in the interstate system in poor condition, 2-year target 1%, 4-year target 1%. Percent of pavements on the non-interstate national highway system in good condition, 50%, 4-year target 48%. Percent of pavements in non-interstate national highway system in poor condition, 2-year target 1.5%, 4-year target 1.5%. Now, the establishment of these targets was internally derived by the Department of Transportation based on these are data driven. They have, I believe now, 6 years or 5 or 6 years worth of data where they're able to systematically analyze where they are in terms of good condition, poor condition with respect to national highway system bridges and pavements. And then we've also included in here, after this letter, this is in your packet, the presentation which was given to us, the MPO staffs of the entire state of Indiana, on August 25th, and this explains what the targets are and how they were derived, and how they were derived, and it goes into extensive engineering detail on all of those performances in terms of pavement cracking, rutting, roughness, what else? Bridges go into here also. So the second part of the packet, inclusion here of the infrastructure target update, that gives you the details on how this one summary page itself was actually derived. Now, the MPO staff does not derive anything here. These are given to us by the Department of Transportation for approval by all 13 metropolitan planning organizations. And again, this is a prerequisite requirement by Congress. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there questions on this plan? Ms. Ryderband?
Yeah, the only question I have is, when we're talking about non-interstate roads, are we talking about state roads? Okay, That's what I needed to know. Thank you.
State roads, no matter what their classifications are, the state roads could be principal arterial, minor arterial, or collector
Well,
type
I was just
facilities.
thinking of some municipal roadways in some parts of the state where the pavement is incredibly poor and certainly exceeds that kind of target. So I just wanted to clarify that we're only talking state roads.
Yeah, these are NDOT jurisdictional transportation facilities only. No local, no county, no municipality, anything like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Further questions from members? Ms. Githens.
Do we have any data to know if these are from NDOT that shows whether or not this is an improvement in our roads and bridges? For example, it says the 2-year target for the bridges classified as good is 49%. Is that an improvement over the current? Ditto for 4 years.
Yes, it is.
And do we know how much?
Well, I haven't gone back to the previous target issuances, which would have been 2 years ago by this body, but it is an improvement. I want to point out here on National Highway System bridges, it's a moving target, because the bridges are at NDOT are assumed to have a 50-year life, and the first rehabilitation usually occurs somewhere around 15 to 20 years, second rehabilitation, another 15 to 20 years, and then at the end of that life cycle, the 50-year life cycle is a total replacement. So I don't know how many thousand bridges NDOT has on its transportation facility, but again, it's a rolling target because some are in different condition status than others. Pavements is a little easier, somewhat easier to do, simply because you can repair those much more rapidly. You can have a quicker response to those than structures. Structures take more design time, and they take more construction time to adequately address. Pavements you can do within a year or less in some cases.
So is there any explanation, since we have to vote on this, for why the percentages of good goes down between the 2 and 4 year targets?
It's similar to the bridge condition, where you've got rolling status of the pavement at any one time. It may be in a good condition this year. Next year, it's a fair to a poor condition, depending on rutting and interstate use. And then that would show up in a 4-year as being less, simply because it's in the pipeline. It just hasn't been addressed at that point in time. These are, I would call this within the margin of error, because they're predicting the pavement conditions 4 years from now, when in reality they may not know the pavement condition 4 years from now, depending upon. And all of these statewide too, pavement conditions are normally a reflection of commercial vehicle activity. The higher proportion of commercial vehicles you have using a facility, such as an interstate facility or a primary arterial, the more rapid the deterioration is. It may not answer your question, but 2% it shows it going down, but I would call that within the range of acceptability.
It's not quite fair to expect you to defend the state's position, so
no.
I want to put that on the record too.
Okay.
Yeah. Further questions to my right? Mr. Seaboard.
I guess I'll just, I think, echo some of the questions being posed and recognize as well that it's probably not the MPO's ability or responsibility to explain how the Indiana Department of Transportation came up with these numbers. And we have a half-page memo from them, and with an expectation that we vote to approve something without any detailed summary of how these things came to be. And it'd be great if in the future the state DOT could provide a little more rationale, but at this point, I'm comfortable with approving it, but it is a little bit of an awkward space to be.
Mr. Martin.
I was going to say in response, that's precisely why we included in NDOT's PowerPoint presentation in the packet. because it goes into, well, where are we at? On bridge. Yeah, it goes into the National Bridge Rating Scale, the deck condition, superstructure, substructure, and the culverts. And in Indiana, correct me if I'm wrong, is it bridges anything more than 20 feet in length? Which includes a lot of small structures.
I'll note, as a matter of, to answer Ms. Githen's question, the numbers are actually in the packet on page 31 of the packet. The old targets between 2018 and 2022 were 48.3 and 47.2 respectively for bridges classified as in good condition.
Okay, but those are targets. Those aren't what
those are their targets, and their targets are higher now for what it's worth, and the actual data precedes that. So their target, or the actual number of bridges in good condition was 49.9 in 2020 and 50.5 in 2021.
Thank you.
So maybe they're shooting a little low based on what their actual numbers are, but what have you. Mr. Seaboard, did you have more to say?
No, I appreciate you bringing this table. It is interesting to see. It's interesting to see the target for the number of bridges being in good condition is going up, but so is the allowable number of bridges in poor condition is going up as well.
Also true. Ms. Reiterband.
I'd like to move to approve the targets submitted by INDOT for their bridges and pavement.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? I haven't gotten to members online yet. Are there members online with questions? Please speak up. If they don't have one, I still have a question. So the half-page letter that Mr. Seaboard referred to is dated August 25th. 180 days from then would be, what is it, end of February? Do we have to approve this month?
No, you don't have to do it this month, but I always like to front load everything.
You like to what?
Front load everything because things may happen. You know,
and so you've anticipated the possibility.
We may have a meeting cancellation. We may have a snowstorm. We may have a pandemic. If you see where I'm at, yeah.
All right. Are there further questions before we go to the public? Seeing no further questions, is there any public comment on this proposal? Please come to the microphone or raise your hand in chat if you're on Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom or type into the chat. Mr. Clements, is there anyone who wants to comment online?
I'm not seeing any at the moment.
Final call for members to speak on, for members of the public to speak online on this proposal. Seeing nobody in the chamber, we'll come back to the body for final comments. Are there any final comments from members of the body who are online? Members to my right? To my left? I will just say that I'm going to vote no on this because I would like it to come back. I'd like to have better explanation, even though I've seen some of the numbers here. But if it passes, I'm okay with it. I just would rather keep it on our radar. Any other comments before we go to a vote? If Mr. Clements would please call the roll.
Seaboard.
Yes.
Horn.
Yes.
Clements.
Yes.
Bannock.
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Wiltz. She mentioned in chat that she had to step away. Githens.
Yes.
Reiterband.
Yes.
Samples.
Yes.
Volan.
My principled no.
Ridge.
Yes.
And that passes, I believe, 9-1.
Correct.
All right. We move on now. So that's the INDOT 2-year and 4-year pavement and bridge transportation management targets have been accepted by the body. We go now to BMC MPO fiscal year 22-26 transportation improvement program amendments. Which member of staff is presenting this?
All right, I will be presenting these. Now this table that is in the packet shows both projects that are being amended by NDOT and the ones that are being modified. The ones that are being modified are in yellow. The ones that are being amended, the ones that will be before your consideration today are listed in green, and those are going to be the ones that I will present. Just a note on the modifications, NDOT wanted to just be clear to let you know that some of these projects, the dollar figures are just changing slightly, and so they wanted to present those to you. But I will just be going over the amendments. So our first amendment is DES number 2000311. And that is a superstructure replacement over Jackstafeet Creek, the eastbound lane, 4.83 miles west of State Route 37. And this is using National Highway System funding for, let's see, for construction with a federal amount of $568,768 with a local match of $142,192 in fiscal year 24. The next project is DES number 1900.
Point of order, Mr. Clements.
Sorry?
Can you explain, when you say amendment, are you saying that the amount in the table is the amount of the amendment?
Oh, sorry, I should have mentioned the ones that are being amended are new projects into the TIP. The ones that are, or the projects that are listed in yellow, the administrative modifications are currently in the TIP. Sorry, that was confusing.
Okay, thank you.
But thank you for bringing that up. Yes, that is good to note. Were there any other questions on that project?
No, please go on. It was just a question of what we're reading. Please go on.
Sure, thank you, yes. So moving on, we have DES number 1900331, and you can see that it's in two different lines that are not next to each other, which is a little confusing, but this is a hot mixed asphalt overlay on State Route 446, on State Route 46 from State Route 446 to the junction of State Route 135, which is in Nashville. And this project is for right-of-way and construction. The right-of-way for federal is $60,000 with a state match of $15,000, and for construction, it is $12,661,386 with a state match of $3,165,347. And that construction will take place in fiscal year 25. The next project is DES number 2001983. It is a small structure replacement on State Route 46, 5.05 miles east of State Route 446. It is also using National Highway System funding in the right-of-way phase for $16,000 with a state match of $4,000 in fiscal year 24. And then our last project is DES number 1901791, and it is for pavement markings at various locations throughout all of the Seymour district. And this is using Highway Safety Improvement Program funding for construction with $441,000 federal and a state match of $49,000 in fiscal year 2024. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can on these.
Thank you for the presentation. Are there questions on the TIP amendments from members who are online? I'll come back to everybody. So if you don't have any right now, that's fine. Members to my right? Members to my left? I have a question. Do we have a choice but to approve this? I mean, this, in particular, the one that's HMA overlay on State Road 46 is a whopping $15 million, actually $30 million if you count the $15 million in 2025 project. I mean, has NDOT simply just decided to do this and we have to say yes?
Well, I would say that you do have a choice, and that's why these amendments are being brought to this committee. But the discussions would then have to happen with NDOT and NDOT Seymour District for further discussion.
Ms. Reiterbrand.
Well, I just want to point out to you, it's many, many miles of roadway that's being paved. It's from 446 out to 135. So,
I know.
While it seems extravagant, it's to maintain that roadway, which is heavily used by many people coming into our county to work every day.
I mean, no question about that. I mean,
Yeah. And I would assume that the problem with turning down an NDOT amendment would mean suddenly our MPO, just like back in the I-69 days, would be at risk. So I would like to move approval of these TIP amendments to the fiscal year 2022-2026 TIP.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Again, further questions from members?
I have one.
Ms. Clements.
I would just like to know, as an example, on these projects, how was the public participation plan implemented?
Well, since all of these are NDOT amendments, NDOT has public participation on their side for these projects. So for all of these projects, NDOT will hold public participation opportunities, I believe, both in person and virtually, as far as I know.
And our local MPO has no duties or obligations as far as soliciting in participation from the public on these roadways that will impact their lives?
So since these are state projects, they don't normally come to the MPO for public participation except through our committee participation phases. So the CAC, TAC, and policy committee, and those are, and all three of these committees are able to, I mean, they have public participation, within these committees as well, but all three of these committees can fully ask NDOT for more information on these projects, and none of the committees have to accept or approve them right away if they deem any of these projects unsatisfactory.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from members online? I do want to ask one more question, if there's none from online. What does the phrase HMA overlay mean?
So HMA overlay is a hot mixed asphalt. It just has to do with the type of surface that is laid on top of the roadway. That's essentially the extent of my knowledge on HMA overlays.
The engineer to your right can give you a...
Well, I think you've already answered the question sufficiently, but it also says structural. Is this in any way widening the street, or is it simply repaving it?
One thing we've failed to mention here too is that they're adding passing blisters the entire length of this corridor where passing blisters do not exist, and they're restabilizing shoulders where the shoulders are insufficiently adequate. So it's not just paving, straight line paving, it's paving with the addition of paved shoulders and paved passing blisters the entire corridor, because that corridor is notorious for the fact that it's no passing for long distances, and then you have a number of driveway cuts for coming in there also at the same time.
Is there going to be any substantial widening of State Road 46?
No, none.
Okay, so a passing blister is what exactly?
You get to say you have a driveway coming up, left turning movement, they add another 6 feet, 5 feet, 4 feet. I don't know what the design standard is right now.
Got it.
Where you can pass on the right-hand side safely and not be delayed.
I find the term blister intriguing. Ms. Ryderband.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they're going to add any of the dots in the center lane so that crazies, when they're drunk driving between these two municipalities, might know that they're actually crossing over into the wrong lane in the middle of the night. That might be useful as a safety feature.
Typically, that's the standard, the lighted pavement reflectors. I shouldn't say lighted, they're pavement reflectors, yeah. And those, and then the shoulders typically have grooving on them on the right-hand side too, so that way you know when you're departing the lane. It's a high probable crash corridor area simply because of the topography and the limited opportunities for passing. So you have a certain amount of what I would call vehicle operator insensitivity to take your time. Yeah.
Mr. Seabour.
I think two quick comments I think I want to make, and maybe that make them a little bit like a question. So one is just as it relates to the public participation plan. Maybe staff can just help, but I think a part of the public participation plan identifies the process to amend a TIP. And so that's maybe a relation of what we're looking at today. So it talks about going to CAC, TAC in here. But please weigh in. And then more just as we're looking at a TIP amendment to add these projects, I want to have a good working relationship with NDOT and appreciate the projects they're doing. But also, I guess, just as much as we can in the future, as a LPA representative, if I was asking for $15 million of federal money, I would probably attend that meeting to answer questions and not put MPO staff in that position. So as much as we can encourage our partners to attend these to help answer these questions and explain what they may entail, I think that would be beneficial.
Could I ask what LPA representative stands for?
Local public agency. So the city of Bloomington, Monroe County, and town of Ellisville are LPAs.
Thank you. Does staff have a response?
I mean, all of these projects are NDOT projects that are subject to NDOT's public participation plan, which is approved by the Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, and it's available online.
Okay, now I have to ask a question.
Sure.
So Mr. Seabour just pointed out that, in theory, the three committees that are part of the MPO are part of the public participation plan. At the very least, they can say that, well, they asked us, and so we're doing that, and it's up to us to implement our own plan. But, I mean, literally, we've got one spreadsheet in front of us describing eight-figure sums, and we haven't even actually gotten a presentation of the items, and they want us to approve it? Like, is that really? Like,
well,
was it not real?
Well, there was a representative from the Department of Transportation at the Technical Advisory Committee meeting.
There was?
Was, yes. And there was to be a representative here today, but unfortunately this is spring break.
Spring break? It's fall.
Fall break. I'm sorry, fall break. God, I got my seasons mixed up. Yeah, it's fall break, and that's why we don't have a representative for the Department of Transportation today, and that individual checked around the entire Seymour District office trying to find somebody else as a replacement, as a proxy representative, and was unsuccessful because everybody has children that are on fall break.
Oh, that's understandable, but I hope they'll understand it if we decide that we are going to wait a month before we approve this, because I'm not in the mood to, I mean.
And in fairness, we have detailed information that NDOT sent out. That detailed information went out to their normal listserv, which would be Monroe County Commissioners, City of Bloomington, Town of Ellisville, everybody affected by the project, any jurisdictional in the area received an early coordination mailing which detailed extensively with photographs the areas to be improved and where the passing blisters would be added.
Let me make it a little clearer then. That's insufficient.
Okay.
That there should be a reasonably more full presentation than a simple spreadsheet. If we're being asked to approve a $15 million project, no matter how justified that money is, I, for one, feel like we should at least have a presentation at this level and not simply at the TAC, not simply we were CC'd with 200 other people on an email. So, like, I'm going to be moving to postpone this, or at least voting to postpone it. I don't want to reject it. I just want a presentation. That's my thought. Sure. Are there any other questions or comments from members before we go to the public? To my right? To my left? 2 members online.
Yeah, Steve, this is Lisa.
Ms. Wiltz? Who was that who spoke?
No,
Ms. Ridge?
It's Lisa.
Ms. Ridge, go ahead.
So, I mean, I want to say I support these projects. They're drainage improvements, they're pavement improvements. All the information on DES numbers and everything is available on NDOT's websites. Yeah, we're on an email with 200 people, but it's up to us to cipher through our emails on what we want to have further information on in advance of when they come to us. But I mean, these are infrastructure improvements, and why would we want to hold it up? Because we didn't get a presentation.
Any further questions or comments from members online? If not, we'll go to the public. Is there a member of the public who'd like to speak? There's no one in the room who'd like to speak. Is there anyone online who would like to speak to these TIP amendments? Please raise your hand in Zoom or type into the chat. Mr. Clements, is there anyone who looks like they might want to speak?
I don't see anyone at the moment.
Last call for public comment. Please raise your hand on Zoom or type into the chat. Seeing none, we'll come back to the Policy Committee for final comment. Is there final comment on my right?
Well, I would
Ms.
just
Clement.
like to say that the blistering of State Road 446 between 446 and 135 seems to be very necessary. That is a dangerous intersection with very few opportunities to pass, and people do have things to do. So, you know, sometimes speed and road conditions can conspire and create a fatal injury. And of course, to the extent possible, NDOT is helping us solve that problem, and I'm grateful for that. And so I'm going to be voting to support this.
Thank you. Further comments on my right?
No.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
We found the correspondence. We can pull it up if you'd like to see it.
If you would, please.
Okay.
I'd like to call the question.
I'd like to see the correspondence.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Under BMC.
Is there any other comment while we're waiting for the correspondence to go up? From members online?
We're currently working on that.
That's fine. Are there members online with final comment? Ms. Wiltz or Ms. Kinsey? If there's no members online who'd like to comment, members to my left?
All right, we have the document here. And this document we would be happy to share with everyone also. And this goes into an extensive description of the entire project with maps for every section of the entire length from Bloomington to Nashville.
And this document was shared with us prior to now?
No, it was not, but it can be.
I mean, there's a whole list of the distribution on who it went to.
Say again, please, Mr. Martin.
There's a distribution list. It went to Monroe County Senior Planner for Flood Administration, Mayor of Bloomington, City Council Member Sue, Town Council of Nashville, Town Council of Nashville, MS4 Coordinator for the City of Bloomington, Julie Thomas, went to Julie Thomas for the Monroe County Commissioners. I'm sorry, I'm looking here very quickly. That looks, went to myself.
You can see on this image that's on the screen an example of what would possibly be a passing blister opportunity.
Yeah. Mr. Clemens, can you please make Ms. Wiltz a panelist?
Sure.
I don't know what that means, but. Okay, but just to be clear, it wasn't in our packet. Should we reasonably have been expected to be aware of the contents of this document?
I mean, we could, if you choose to postpone, we could postpone. I mean, it's 87 pages of documentation here that we could forward to everybody.
All right, Ms. Wiltz is.
I mean,
able to speak
in the agenda today, there was the electric vehicle infrastructure deployment plan that was too long, so you didn't include it, but you included a link. There isn't even a link to this document. That's.
Well, this document was sent to us. I don't know where it's posted at online.
Okay.
It's within their statewide transportation improvement program, which includes 5,000 projects. So that's the reason for not having a URL link, hot link. But we could have sent this out to you had we known. We would have sent it out, and knowing what we know now, we will from now on.
All right. To that end, since I haven't made final comment, I'm simply going to say that I'm going to vote no instead of proposing to postpone. Because I am confident that the projects being proposed here are necessary, shall we say. Certainly, Ms. Clements has pointed out that the improvements are good, and there's a reasonable amount of goodwill here. But I also am concerned about being taken for granted. It's already sort of an issue that I think we have locally with INDOT, that we're being taken for granted. The INDOT representative isn't even here today. Had he been here, I would question whether he would actually bother to present these documents to us. Again, I'll just speak from my own experience in this room. We're normally accustomed, even though we could just read the packet, we're accustomed to having it presented to us as well. This document wasn't even linked to in our packet, and I do not want to see that repeated. So anything we can do to, and that redundancy, like if I'm expected to scour every single email message you've ever gotten, because I get hundreds of messages, and a lot of them are junk, and a lot of them are, like INDOT, sent to hundreds of people, the eyes glaze over after a while. So,
call the question.
I have a comment.
Mr. Seabour. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Horn. I'm sorry.
Now, I'm sitting here wondering. This is a public meeting for a purpose. This is an opportunity for the public to intersect with this committee, with its agenda. And I think the fact that this is such a large financial event, significant financial event, and that those that are proposing it are not here to answer to the public, not necessarily to answer to us, but to the public is bad precedent. Maybe this has already been set as precedent and we become numb to it, but as a newer person here, it seems odd to me that those proposing these major uses of taxpayer funds are not here to at least be available to the public. So, you know, not even a letter, if I'm mistaken, that to the MPO here stating, we're sorry we couldn't find a state employee to come and represent this $50 million project because we're all on vacation. I mean, if we'd gotten that letter, I'm not exactly sure how that would have affected us all, but I'm guessing that is the case, that there just isn't anybody available to talk about it. So maybe it came at the wrong time. And I'm almost inclined to say I would vote against the motion as it stands now, unless it's amended just to postpone it. Thanks.
Ms. Ryderbrand.
Mr. Chair, I called the question, and a lot of these comments are very valid and very important, but they should be in the comments, not on items on the agenda, in my mind, especially since I did say call the question.
Ms. Ryderbrand, I disagree with you. I disagree, excuse me. I disagree with you. This is not, I mean, I don't know if I'm doing procedure wrong, but it's not my understanding of procedure. All right, that comments are valid, and you cannot simply interrupt. We had this debate in City Council about, can you call the question and cut off comment? You should not be able to do that. Not even everybody has spoken once yet. Ms. Clements.
Yes, while I had said that I am in support of the project and that I would be voting to support it, I think I've been persuaded by Council Member Bolin and Mr. Horn here that public participation is important, and that as we scan through the photos of the proposed project, it left me wondering the ways in which the property owners were notified and the ways in which it is a large project. And I haven't even been reading about it in the newspaper or in any other public venue, even if our only public outreach were to be Facebook. I've missed that too. So I just think that public participation is lacking here, and it is an extensive project involving private property. And I have a lot of questions, but I am in support of safety in that corridor. And from what I understand, we're not under a deadline. Is that true?
I don't believe so.
Question directed to staff.
But this would be a question for Mr. Wallman and NDOT Seymour District.
Say that again, please.
I don't believe so, but this is a question for NDOT and the NDOT Seymour District. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any final comments from members online?
You know, I had a comment, but it was really already covered by most of the people who've already spoken. I just want to clarify that I understand that if I vote that we're not approving this, that doesn't hold up significantly the projects being done. Is that correct?
Staff?
I believe that is correct.
So you're saying, just to reiterate her question, that if we vote no, it does not permanently exclude these amendments from the tip. They can be brought back to us?
Correct. I mean, I suppose there's another course of doing this by postponing this a month as well, instead of voting no on the projects as they are.
Thank you.
Table it?
Well, we can move to postpone, but I want to make sure that every member online has had a chance to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member online? Ms. Kinsey, Ms. Ridge?
I'll just take a moment to say that, you know, I agree with some of the really well-meaning statements about the importance of public participation in this discussion, and the fact that the NDOT representative is not present is also concerning to me, because it suggests that we can't even pose questions to someone who would be able to respond in an authoritative way about NDOT's timelines. Excuse me, but I also think, I worry about potentially losing funding. I wouldn't want to do that because these are well-meaning projects. So my process, or my inclination is to postpone or table this so that we can ensure that an INDOT representative is present. That might make most sense. I don't think we want to appear to obstruct this work and to take advantage of INDOT's support for needed improvement projects, but it would be a reason to delay a decision. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Ridge. Are there any other final comments? Mr. Seaborg.
Just a couple quick comments. I appreciate the conversations and agree with a lot of the concerns. I will also just admit that I seconded the motion to approve, and I would intend on voting yes, despite my concerns, recognizing that our technical advisory committee had INDOT personnel present, and they ultimately recommended approval. A couple of the projects have fiscal year 23 funding, and we are in fiscal year 23, so I would be concerned about delaying those projects. They could have impacts. So I will be voting yes. I understand and appreciate the concerns and hope that in the future we have more dialogue opportunities, but I just wanted to clarify those comments.
Thank you. Any other final comments?
Yeah, this is Lisa.
Ms. Ridge, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that wasn't me talking before when you thanked me for speaking, but I want to thank Andrew for bringing that up. All of our projects are on timelines, including INDOT's and different fiscal constraints within a budget fiscal year. And I appreciate staff speaking up, and I know they can't speak for INDOT, but I don't think there was ever a definite, no, we will not risk losing this project by tabling it. It was, I believe so. I don't believe we're on a timeline. So that would give me concern. I would not support postponing it. I agree with Andrew that we get our ducks in a row for the next time and make sure that we get with INDOT and tell them that we would like representation if they know this is going to be on the agenda in the future. But to sit here and say that there is not a timeline or that we're not risking losing funds, I don't know that anybody could sit here and definitely say that's a definite no, we're not concerned with that.
Thank you. Are there any other final comments? I'll entertain a motion.
There's a motion on the floor.
Great. Will Mr. Clemens please call the roll on the motion to approve?
Horn.
No.
Clements.
Can you come back to me?
Sure. Bannock.
Yes.
Kinsey.
Yes.
Wiltz.
Ms. Wiltz?
She may have stepped away again. I'll come back to her too. Githens.
Yes.
Ryder Band.
Yes.
Samples.
Yes.
Volan.
No.
Ridge.
Yes.
Seaborg.
Yes.
It's passed.
Clements.
Well, I know that my vote is not influential in either way, and so I am going to, especially in a session where we have talked about the public participation plan, I'm going to vote no just because of questions about the validity of the public participation. That being said, I recognize the importance of the project and the projects. I just have questions about
Ms. Clements, we're just a vote right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clements?
Wiltz. And she must have stepped away again.
What is the vote tally, Mr. Clements?
I think we have 7-3.
The amendments are approved, 7-3. We now go to public comment on matters not included on the agenda. If there's anyone on Zoom who'd like to speak, please use the raise hand function or type into the chat. Mr. Clements, are there any members of the public who would like to speak on items not on the agenda?
I'm not seeing any at the moment.
We're going to move on to communications from committee members on matters not included on the agenda. There seems to be one item. Who has this item on DS 1800-199 and 18,086?
Neither of us. It's a state of Indiana and dot
All right,
project.
then we're going to move on. Are there any topic suggestions for future agendas besides the items that are already going to be returned to this agenda? From members online? We'll now go to upcoming meetings. Can I read this or does staff read it?
You can go ahead.
All right, the Technical Advisory Committee meets November 16th at 10 a.m. That is 1 week earlier than normally scheduled given the Thanksgiving holiday. This is true for all meetings. The Citizens Advisory Committee meets the same day at 6:30 p.m. in a hybrid format, and the Policy Committee meets November 18th at 1:30 p.m. in a hybrid format. And again, these are all, that's 1 week later than normally scheduled because of the Veterans Day holiday. With that, if we have no other business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Need a second?
Second.
All right, this meeting is adjourned.